Hello, and welcome to a Jeffrey Tiermaker episode. This episode is on Talking Heads. My name is Gordon. I'm here with my brother John.
Hello.
And we're going to talk through the ranking we did a couple of years ago and turn that into a Tiermaker grid. Our ranking starts with banger, then splendid, then decent, then Nout special, and finishing at the bottom with clanger. So we'll go through the albums and put them on this grid. So 1977, it's Talking Heads 77, their debut album. We ranked this third, which is quite high, I think, on reflection.
Yeah, too high.
Yes, I would agree with you.
Yeah, this is a ridiculous ranking. We should just start by saying, because we actually couldn't agree on some fairly basic things, this ends up being such a mess, this ranking. It's our worst ranking ever, I think.
It's not far. I've not looked at it for a while, but obviously having listened to a bit of Talking Heads in between, my opinion's changed a little bit. And yes, I do think it is in some ways nonsense. And I would like to apologise to some Talking Heads in advance. And you will know, if you've not listened to the podcast, you'll know why when we get to the album. But some of you will be appalled.
I'm appalled. I am one of the ones that is appalled with this ranking. And it definitely doesn't represent my view as when you look at it as a whole.
So where would you put Talking Heads 77 on this grid?
Well, I mean, I would call it, ignoring the ranking, I would say it's a decent album. I think it's a pretty good, fun debut. It's quite flawed. It's a little bit empty sounding for my personal taste, but it's got some great songs on it, and I really like the style of it. So I would probably put it decent, but we're going to have to change that because of some of the ones that were below it, which are quite clearly above decent.
Yeah, I mean, I would agree. I would put it as decent. I agree with what you said. I think it is a good album. I think it's one that you're more likely to tire of with repeated listenings, and it's not one that when I go back to listen to Talking Heads, that I put on.
No, I wouldn't either.
But it is definitely, there are some good songs on here, so I would agree with decent ranking. But shall we leave it there for now? Because we will probably have to move it. But,
well, let's do the ranking. Let's just talk through what we think now, and then we'll just have to shuffle it around at the end or something. Because otherwise it's going to become such a blooming shambles.
Yeah, well, we've made our bed, so we've got to try and make this work somehow. So the next album, 1978, is More Songs About Buildings and Food, which I think is generally quite underrated, including by us in our ranking.
Yeah.
As I would place this above 77 comfortably. As we discussed in the podcast, I think I went through that Talking Heads. There was an article where they'd ranked all the songs, and then I ranked the albums using that ranking. And this album came out top.
Well, I certainly wouldn't put it top. I mean, absolutely no way would I put it top. But at the same time, I agree with you that it's probably better than the debut. I think we're into Brian Eno territory now, aren't we, already? But I don't think it's massively better than the debut. I would put it one nudge above it. So I would put it also decent, but just one place higher.
Fair enough. I would put it into splendid. I do think it is noticeably better for me. It is the Eno's first album, but I don't think it was songs that he'd particularly worked on. I think it's what they had left over, wasn't it?
Yeah.
But yeah, I would have this as splendid, but it is below 77, so we can leave it in. Shall we leave it in decent for now?
I think so. Yeah.
I mean, it's not going to obviously go down,
but above 77 in our current thinking.
Yes, yeah, definitely. But in our ranking that we are following, it is actually below.
I know.
So next we have Fear of Music, 1979. Where would you put this one?
Well, I think this is a massive step forward, and this gets into the Talking Heads that I really started to like back in the day. I don't think I'd ever heard the first two albums at the time back in the 80s, but I did hear this and I did like it a lot. So for me, I think this is definitely in the splendid category, and I would be putting it, really near the top. But of course we can't, can we? We have to put it between those two albums.
Yes.
So in real life, I would make it splendid. Oh God, this is so ridiculous.
Yeah, I sort of agree with you on a lot of what you've said, but I did feel that it just felt a little bit soulless. And a lot of the songs, when you listen to them on the live albums, they're much better recordings.
They definitely have more pizzazz when you listen to them live. I'd agree with you there. And I don't think this is peak Talking Heads, although it does often rank top for people. I don't think it is in my view. I think it is a little bit sort of flat. And there's a couple of songs that I like a bit less, but I do think it's quite a big step forward in the other two, and it certainly gets up to the definition of splendid. I think that's, without question. Would you, if we're doing this like now, would you put it above or below More Songs?
Below. I would have it below. I would have it in decent.
Okay. I'd have it in splendid above More Songs. So, okay. But we're kind of shuffling around similar parts of the world there.
We're not miles apart, but we're more miles apart from our actually original ranking.
Yeah. Well, I mean, if you moved 77 to the end of this rather than the top of this little cluster, then it would be a bit closer. But anyway,
yeah.
Let's move on.
So the next album was 1980's Remain in Light.
And this was the thing that caused the problem. Well, it was you that caused the problem, but it was about this.
Yes. Yeah. You see, I would have this in clanger or possibly Now Special. I have tried, and I cannot get to grips with it at all. Just don't find it remotely enjoyable. I could be charitable and put it into Now Special, which is probably fairer actually than clanger.
Well, I would put
it would be bottom. It would be my last choice to play of all their albums.
You see, this is what I'm having to deal with, because I would put this in banger. I mean, I really like this album. I could be persuaded into splendid, on compromise, but you were, quite adamant about putting it bottom. Inexplicably, just don't get it at all. So that's why it ends up literally being in the middle. Well, the middle, as much of a middle as you can get with 8 albums. And it just sits there below Fear of Music in our ranking. But this is just an increasingly bumbly mess now, because this should be up quite clearly in one of the top 2 rankings. It's a cracking album. Or in your opinion, quite clearly it should be at the bottom.
Well, it is at the bottom for me, definitely. But next, we actually started agreeing a little bit, because the next album is Speaking in Tongues, 1983. We rank this top, and I'm happy with that ranking.
Oh, good. Good. So you've changed a little bit on that then?
A little bit, yeah. Yeah, I think having listened more, yes, I do think it's better. I found that, particularly without going too far ahead with Little Creatures, I think Little Creatures has dated quite a bit.
Right.
Which I don't think is true of Speaking in Tongues. And of course it is a bit more Talking Headsy.
Yeah, I think it's definitely more Talking Headsy. I think that's without a doubt. I agree. I think Speaking in Tongues for me is absolutely a banger. Top of the tree, best album. I would put Remain in Light second, and then probably Little Creatures third. All of them as bangers. Then Fear of Music, splendid. Next line. That's what I would do. If I was allowed.
Well, you're not at the moment.
No,
so
not, am I?
We've kind of moved on to Little Creatures as well, which we rank second, and we both sort of agree it is.
It's a pop masterpiece. It's a pop masterpiece. I don't think it sounds dated. Well, I'm just saying that I don't necessarily listen to the whole thing very often.
I think there are a couple of bits in it, which means it's not like a complete. It just has a couple of flaws, I think. And one of them, I can't remember what the song is now, but there is one song that is a little bit I think very dated, actually. Not the whole album at all, but there is one song I thought I would take that off this album now.
Well, I don't know which one that is, but I think things like And She Was, Lady Don't Mind, Road to Nowhere are all great. I remember enjoying Stay Up Late at the time. I haven't listened to it for quite a while, but I remember thinking that was a really good, fun song.
It is, yeah. It's
a bit silly.
It sounds to me more like something that comes off True Stories.
Yeah,
I know they were all kind of from the same kind of session, but in a good way, it is a good song.
Yeah. Can you hear Daisy?
I can very clearly, yes. I'm just wondering what she thinks. Is she not into Little Creatures? So after Little Creatures, we come to True Stories, 1986, which is, if I remember rightly, this was the main project that David Boone was working on, and Little Creatures was kind of the not required tracks from all that had been written, which I find amazing, because Little Creatures, I think, is a lot better.
Yeah, completely agree.
But it is similar in style. It is sort of quite, a lot poppier, certainly for Talking Heads. And this is we rank this bottom, which is, I don't have a massive problem with. It's certainly in the right area. It's certainly not their best album. I mean, I would put this Now Special.
Yeah, I mean, I'd be tempted with decent or Now Special. I do think it's in the bottom 2, and I vary in which order the bottom 2 go. I mean, for me, this and Naked are the bottom 2, and then above that you've got More Songs and 77, Then above that, you've got Fear of Music, and then you've got the other three at the top. So for me, okay, I'd probably might put this decent, but certainly wouldn't be going above the first two albums. But there's some good stuff on it and some quite enjoyable songs. It's a bit too shouty, a bit too poppy, but it's good. It's certainly not bad.
Yeah, so I'm moving on to that then. So we going to Naked, which is 1988. We rank that above True Stories. Would you want that into decent or now special?
I think it actually sounds quite different than True Stories to me. It does feel like a step change again, but not necessarily a particularly interesting one. It just steps into sort of slightly more mediocre sounding earlier Talking Heads to me, without quite so many hooks and catchiness. Yeah. So I think it probably is fine. Whatever category you put True Stories in, it probably sits in the same category to me. I think probably now it's special, actually, yeah. Yeah.
I do think there's a conscious step to try and move back to being more like Talking Heads with this album. I just don't think it particularly works. Although there are some nice tracks on it, but I don't think there's that much. It is, I think, they're a little bit too not interesting enough compared to their other stuff.
Yeah, I mean, it does sound a little bit like a band that's really got to the end of its tether a bit, because you had Tina and Chris are doing the Tom Tom Club, and obviously they're married and they've got their own lives. Jerry's going around doing lots of other things, production stuff. David's got grandiose ideas about being his sort of genius solo career. So I think they're probably just not really enjoying being Talking Heads in the same way that they were. They're certainly not playing live anymore. Yeah, I think by this point they're just kind of bored of it all.
Yeah, it was the Speaking in Tongues tour, wasn't it? So it was about 83, 84 probably, I think, when they stopped playing live.
Oh, yeah, that's right. Yeah, because then they did the
Stop Making Sense was obviously one of the last things they did in terms of live, and sort of Little Creatures onwards. There was no live tours at all.
So you're talking 5-6 years without touring, and tours do, hold bands together because they have to be working together for such a long period of time. So I think it is the end of the road of the band at this point, and it feels like it. Maybe they could have taken a break and come back within 2-4 years or something, which I think they did, didn't they? There was another couple of songs, but no actual album. Although now they seem to be getting on again, and who knows, there may well be a sniff of a tour. They might want to fill up their bank balances before they retire. So there we go. There's our rubbish ranking, which is all over the place and none of us agree with. And nobody watching this will agree with either.
Yeah, and if you want to listen to us bicker about this in more detail, though, you can go to the actual audio podcast, which was from must have been 2020 when we did it, I think.
Find out. Hold on, I've got it open here. Yeah, 2020. Yeah, September 2020 is when it was released.
You can find all information, articles at jeffreymusic.rocks and podcasts. Where you find podcasts, it's just Jeffrey Podcast.
And you can like and subscribe to this channel, which would be much appreciated.
Oh, yeah. Is there a bell or something you can ring as well?
That notifies you. I've worked this out, actually. The bell notifies you when there's in a separate place that there's been an update. So I don't really care whether you ring that or not.
All right. Probably best not to do that, isn't it?
I don't know. You can like and subscribe. I mean, and then actually watch the videos, but I'm not really bothered whether people click bells and stuff.
I didn't know what it did, but usually get asked to do that, but I don't. I personally wouldn't want notifications about that video.
It's only within YouTube. When you actually go on YouTube, the little bell in the corner has a little dot next to it. I don't think that they're any more intrusive than that.
Okay, that's not too bad then. But anyway.
So if there's any channels that you're watching that you're really interested in the next, and you really want to see what happens next, it's actually quite a good way of doing that. But obviously this channel doesn't qualify for that. It's like, who gives a crap what we do next, really? We're not even that bothered ourselves.
No. We do know that.
I wouldn't even click the bell on this channel.
I'm not sure. What is next? Is it?
I think it's Muse and then Fiona Apple.
Well, there you go. So something exciting to look forward to.
Yeah.
Listeners, viewers, whatever you are. But you make your decisions on what you click on.